Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting on tonight. We're meeting with the Commissioner Assessor's Office, the Commissioner with the Assessor's Office on tonight, and we'll be talking about some important information that you as residents need to know as we start to hit the deadlines of these important deadlines that we have to meet when it comes to you submitting your request to reduce your assessment and so on and so forth. So, and I know there's lots of questions, so we will do the best that we can to respond to everyone and get your questions answered. When you have a question, there is a chat box. Please use the chat box to put that information in. And as I said, Danielle and myself will be tracking those so that we can get the questions to the presenters. I will at this time have both you guys introduce yourself, and then I will come off the screen so that I can monitor the questions. Okay.
Thank you, Alderwoman Dodd. I appreciate you hosting this, and I appreciate the invitation and the ability and opportunity to present to your constituents today. My name is Nicole Larson. I'm the fairly new Commissioner of Assessments for the Assessor's Office for the City of Milwaukee. I started with the office in January, and I was confirmed as the new Assessment Commissioner on March 1st of 2022. Stephen?
I'm Stephen Schwer. I'm the Assessment Operations Director, and I've been with the City of Milwaukee for about 7 years.
And just to give a little bit of information of why do we have two of us here today is Stephen has the extensive experience. He works directly with the appraisers who you may have spoken with already, or who you may have the opportunity to speak with on a daily basis, as well as their supervisors. So he oversees the operations of assessments and appraisal within our office. So we'll just jump right in. I'm just going to give you some information about the 2022 revaluation. And then, as Alderwoman Dodd said, go ahead and put your questions in the chat box and we'll take those later on, okay? If you do have specific questions, I should say property specific questions, like why did my appraisal go up? We won't be answering those tonight because those, we want to give you a better communication. We don't want to do that in front of a group of people. We'll give you the hotline as we go through the presentation where you can talk to an actual appraiser and get that information, okay? So this is just our cover page here, Revaluation 2022. My name down at the bottom there. It's spelled L-A-R-S-E-N, just in case that ever comes up in the future. I know on the chat box I have an O-N at the end of it there. But let's just jump right in. So when must Milwaukee complete a revaluation? So state law requires that all classes of property must be revalued at full value at least once every 5 years. You see the statutory citation after that. Milwaukee has been doing revaluations every year for about the last 20 years, with the exception of 2021, when they did what was called a maintenance year. So what does that mean? A maintenance year means that new values for all the properties within the city of Milwaukee weren't reset unless something significant happened, like you had an old dilapidated garage and that garage was taken down, so it reduced the value of the property a little bit. Or you didn't have a garage and you built a new garage, and that addition of that garage caused an increase in valuation. So we looked at the permits and building permits and whatnot to see if there were any changes to a property and made those changes as needed. But as far as just a citywide revaluation, we didn't do that. And so for the majority of property owners within the city, they saw the values from 2020 carry over. And just fun fact, there are approximately 151,000 parcels in the city of Milwaukee, residential and commercial. All right, so I didn't know how to title this, but how did 2021 affect 2022? In most areas across the city, I believe it was about 93% of the parcels within the city of Milwaukee experienced an increase for 2022. Why is that? It's important to know a little bit of a background on revaluation and assessment in the state of Wisconsin and the city of Milwaukee. So in 2020, the assessments, well, let me back up a little bit. How we value properties is we try to get the property as close to market value as possible. And I know there's sort of this misconception that assessed value is different from market value or fair market value, and that's often the case because for assessed value, we are looking at the past. We are looking backwards to determine what should values be moving forward or as of January 1st of each year. And so when we consider 2020, the assessments in 2020, as I'm sure many of you remember, there was a big jump in 2020, reflected the market as it was in 2019. So that's that looking backwards. They looked to see what were the sales in 2019 like to establish that value as of January 1st of 2020. And I bought a house in 18, and I know the market was pretty hot at that point, and the sales have only increased between 18, 19, and 20. And so in 2020, sales, looking back to 2019, were pretty hot, and so values were pretty high, and so that's why you saw those high values in 2020. And so if a revaluation had been done in 2021, remember we said it was just a maintenance year, they just carry the values over from the prior year. If a revaluation was done in 2021, it would have reflected the market values from 2020. Again, the market was hot in 19, hot in 20, so you would have seen an increase, would have likely seen an increase in 2021 had they did a revaluation of the properties rather than just maintaining all those values. So what we're really seeing in 2022 is kind of we leapfrogged 21. We went from 2020 to 2022. And so we're looking at 2 years worth of increases. And so hypothetically, if there were a 17% increase, if we did a revaluation in 21, you might have seen 10% in 21 and then another 7% in 22. So that's kind of why we're seeing jumps in 2022. It's because we didn't do that revaluation in 2021. Just to kind of give you an idea of the number of sales that we are looking at, down at that fourth bullet point there, in 2019, we had 4,700 valid sales. I'll get to that in a moment, what that means. 2020, we had 5,300 valid sales. And 2021, we had 8,600 valid sales. What's a valid sale? Well, the opposite is an invalid sale, okay? A valid sale is something that reflects what the market is doing with a property. It's what we would like to call an arm's length transaction. What a willing seller is willing to sell the property for and what a willing buyer is willing to buy the property for. If you have something like a foreclosure, that's not a willing seller and a willing buyer. So that would be an invalid sale. If you had an LLC that transferred it to another LLC, that's not a valid sale. That's an invalid sale because that's, doesn't reflect an arm's length transaction. Or if you had, a brother transferring it to a brother for, $5 or something, that's not a valid sale. That would be discounted as an invalid sale. And those numbers are important because in reality, we are talking about, I think I have a slide here. I'll get to that in a moment. I can point that out. I think we had about 17,000 sales, 17,000 documents that we actually laid our eyes on. So we're not just issuing notices of assessments. We actually look and reflect changes in ownership of property within the city of Milwaukee. So while we're looking at 8,600 sales, we've laid eyes on about 17,000 documents that show changes in ownership. And we make determinations on what constitutes a valid or an invalid sale. So how did 21 affect 22? Just as I stated a minute or so ago, in 22, we're feeling a result of 2 years worth of market activity since we didn't revalue in 2021. And then because the market for residential real estate was so robust in 20 and 21, and real estate prices have increased, most properties will likely see an increase in their assessed values. Okay. This is a point that I really want to highlight. The assessor's office, I know I thought about it at one point. What does the assessor do? It seems like the assessor is the person behind the curtain. And how do they arrive at these figures? How do they throw these numbers out? And they think that the assessor sort of sets the value of property. What we do in the assessor's office, we reflect what the market is doing. We look at actual sales and say, okay, what are the actual sales for these particular types of properties? And we look at all different classes of properties and types of properties, and we build models. And just for instance, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath colonial in this particular neighborhood, in this development, what would that go for? And then we adjust those models based on, well, maybe there's a 4-bedroom home with 2 bathrooms, something like that. And so we create these models. We have a modeling team in-house that analyzes these sales and creates these models, and it goes into what's called our mass appraisal system. I know I'm jumping around on a lot of different terms here, so please ask questions if you have them. We have, as I mentioned, over 151,000 parcels of property within the city. We have approximately 25 appraisers. Currently, we only have 21 of those positions filled. And so every year, 21 or 25 appraisers can't go out and visit 151,000 properties within the city. So we have this tool, what's called the CAMA system. It's a computer-aided mass appraisal system that interprets these models that we built and that spits out figures, right? And then we make adjustments. We lay our human eyes on it after those numbers come out, and then we make adjustments there. The 2022 values reflect the market activity. They don't determine the market. So that's what I said. We're looking backwards to see what the actual sales were like, and that's how we build our models and operate our mass appraisal system. So this is a fun kind of graph here. The total e-returns. So e-returns are the documents that reflect a change in ownership. It's what grantors and grantees file with the state of Wisconsin to let them know that ownership has changed. You can see in 2019, that is that green line there. It is kind of the lowest number there. It kind of drops down and is the lowest overall number. And I'll show you the numbers in the next slide. You can see that blue, that's 2022. This is as of the end of March 30th. That's the highest number of sales that we have. And so let me jump to the next slide and might make it a little bit clearer. So e-returns totals 2019 and 2021. And this is what I talked about, how we're looking at 17,000 documents or 17,000 conveyances or transfers in a particular year. You can see in column B there, for the year, we had 14,611 conveyances in 2019. 2020, we had 14,569. Jump over to column E and you can see we had 17,667 conveyances that we laid our eyes on. And if you look at 2022 as of March 30th, we don't have the total number. Well, we have the total number as of March 30th, but obviously we're not through the year yet, so we don't know what the total sales are. But if you kind of look across at January there, in 21, we had 1,221. In 22, we had 1,260. In February of 21, we had 1,117. 22, we had 1,182. So the numbers are higher. So that means that properties are still being sold aggressively, bought and sold aggressively. We have lots of sales, and we're not seeing signs of the sales slowing down. So it's good that the good thing is that we have more accurate numbers. It allows us to create better models. But what some might see as a negative is that it means there's high demand for properties, low supply. It could push the numbers up as far as what the selling prices are going for, right? Or what the selling prices end up being, right? Because again, what the selling prices are reflect what our assessments are. It's also a good thing too, because people, for many people, the home is their biggest asset. And what do we want our assets to do? We want our assets to appreciate, right? We want them to increase in value. If you can just take a look at this slide here. So the median price, that's like if you took a set of numbers 1 through 5, number 3, that's the very middle price. That's the median of those 5 numbers. So the median price for residential homes in 2019 was $138,000. It has steadily increased since then. 2020, it was $160,000. 21, it's $172,000. So those prices are rising, 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 and you can see that reflected in that graph there. All right, so the citywide assessment change by class. This is a chart showing the numbers that you've probably read about in the news or heard about in the news. We have in that very first column, property class, you can go down to that shaded box there, all residential. And then if you go down a little bit further, it shows all commercial. Okay, let's go back to that shaded box, all residential. The big important number here, the number that most people are interested in is what is the percent change? From 2021 to 2022, you'll see those numbers are slightly different. It was a 17.77% increase in assessed values between 21 and 22 for residential only. You go down to commercial, you'll see the actual numbers increase from the 2021 assessment to the 2022 assessment. The commercial increase was 6.68%. When you average those two numbers together, pro rata, it comes out with a citywide increase of, oops, I'm sorry about that, 13.23%. So that's the number that we're seeing across citywide is 13.23% average increase. What does that mean? In residential, as I mentioned, 2 years worth of sales price appreciation, high demand and low supply, and low interest rates. And so people are able to borrow money quicker and easier, it seems, and they're able to buy homes, and that's what they've been doing the last number of years. 6.68 for commercial. What the heck is going on there? Well, COVID happened in 2020, and people weren't going to restaurants as much, and people weren't going into the office as much. And so the demand for commercial buildings, non-residential buildings has slowed. And so we didn't see as much of an increase in the commercial sector as we did in the residential sector. How are residential property owners affected? Well, everyone I think talks about, and we'll get to this point in a little bit, is, oh my gosh, my assessment has gone up, my taxes are going to increase. And that could happen, but it may also not happen, okay? And the good thing for your district, District 5, is that the district-wide increase was pretty close to the city-wide increase of 13.23%. Overall, the increase for District 5 was 12.99%. That's reflective of a 15.38% increase in residential values and a 6.24% increase in commercial values. So it's tracking pretty closely to the citywide numbers. And overall, among the 15 districts, District 5 was number 11. Okay, and so that's pretty good. Is if you're concerned about taxes increasing, that's pretty good, because it means you're pretty close to the citywide. And so trying to think of how to describe it. If like a rising tide lifts all boats, right? And so if you increase 15% and your neighbor increased 15% and the city has increased 15% or 13%, everybody's increased some, right? And so if you're at 15, the citywide is at 13, you might see a small increase provided that the levy amounts are kept the same. But it shouldn't be too significant. Okay, so that's kind of the good thing as far as the taxes go. More equity is a benefit of having an increased asset or value to your asset, excuse me. And what does that mean? If you need to, take a home equity loan because you want to do some home improvements, having that higher value could assist you in accessing the equity that's in that home. Building wealth, just as I said, home is often the largest asset that we own, and so if you're getting ready to sell, or like I said, if you want to access the equity in the home to do some improvements or whatnot, that helps you build that wealth. It's stabilizing historically low wealth neighborhoods. We've had very robust, I will say, I hate to use that overuse that word, but it seems like the best word, robust sales in neighborhoods that have traditionally, been maybe underrepresented as far as values go. And so there are good things, and I know it's often difficult to see because people often think, oh my gosh, taxes, but there are really good aspects to having an increased value. You can see here citywide, the assessment changed by aldermanic district. And there you are across 5 over there. Oops, I keep touching this and I don't mean to, I apologize. So Yeah, so that's just kind of the breakdown by aldermanic district there, and you can see yours in 5. And so the 15.3% increase. Let's see, your median assessment in 2021 was $140,000, and in 2022 the median assessment is $160,500. So you're increasing, in line with the rest of the city. This is just a neighborhood map. There, yeah, that shows the actual neighborhoods displayed on there, and I'm sorry it's very small. You can see here as well the this is another map that shows the increases. If you look over at 5 there, and I'm sorry if it's very small for you to see. I'm on a laptop and a larger desktop here screen too, so forgive me for looking away from the camera, but you can kind of see there. You're actually, it looks in District 5, the dark green is where the highest increases were. And you can see that's sort of in the north central part of the city there. Here in District 5, you're looking at, you have a good number of increases, 1.31 to 15% increases. And then the next grouping up 15 to 25% increases. So you're kind of on the lower scale of the increases. And this is the same map. It's just listed by the neighborhood number and not the aldermanic district. Those boundaries aren't necessarily the same. You might have a neighborhood that straddles 2 or even 3 different aldermanic districts. Okay, so question of the night: how do I appeal my assessment? So you have a couple of opportunities to appeal, but I'm going to tell you the very first bit of information that I think is the most important, and that's the deadline to appeal. If the deadline is not something we set, it's set by state statute, and we do not have the authority to extend that. State legislature has said everybody must file their appeals, or they call them objections, by the 3rd Monday in May. And so for 2022, that is May 16th. We're asking that those are submitted to us by 4:45 p.m. because we will take those if you drop them into our office in person. We will take them by mail, or for the very first time this year, we will take them online. So if you go to our city assessor website, there is an appeal tab on the website, and you can appeal. You can submit your appeal online. So I think we're the only jurisdiction that does that, and it's the first year of doing it. So I'm not going to say it's a perfect system. It might be a little bit clunky, and we're learning that as we're going through it. This isn't something we farmed out and paid a lot of money for. It's something that people within our office and the city's IT department built. It's a homegrown product. So like I said, it might not be perfect, and if you have feedback on it, please feel free to share that with us. I would recommend, and I'm recommending this to everyone, before you file that appeal, call and talk to your appraiser, because that appraiser can walk you through how the values were reached. Quite often values are off because we haven't done an inspection in years and years and years. And I think there's a common fear of letting the assessors in our houses because we're afraid that, oh my gosh, they're gonna jack up my value. And that's the only reason that they want to come in. That's not the reason. Our goal is to be accurate. We as assessors, we strive for accuracy and uniformity. Uniformity is ensuring that all parcels of property are taxed uniformly within the municipality and within the state. Accuracy is we want to make sure that what we're valuing is an accurate value for the condition of the house, the style of the house, the features of the house, like I mentioned, the bedrooms and bathrooms. And so we want to make sure that our information is accurate. We don't care if it's better. I mean, we care if it's better or worse because we want to be accurate, but our goal isn't to simply increase. Our goal is to be accurate and have accurate records that reflect what the condition of the property is like. Excuse me, right now we are in what's called our open book period, and that's the period where you can come in and ask about, questions about the assessment roll overall or questions about your property in particular. And please take advantage of that. We are here 8 to 4:45, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, until, well, we're here 8 to 4:45 every day. Every day that's not a holiday, we're here. And I should assess, I got that word on the brain, should have offered that information. We are always here to answer questions and to give information, okay? Open book is just sort of the special period of time we set aside for you, for our customers and constituents to come in and ask questions about your property, or to call us, or, you know, I mean, by phone or in person, we're here for you. But we are really here all year. You know, if you know, even after open book period ends, you still have questions about, well, how is my property valued? Call us, please, please, please. During the open book period, we have a special hotline set up, and that is staffed by our appraisers, and that is 414-286-6565. Again, that number is available 8 o'clock to 4:45 each day. It's staffed by appraisers. They log into this line. They will answer phone calls as they come in, and they will walk you through the process and give you all the information that you need, and they'll take all the time that you need to answer your questions. And I think that's it. So I will, Stephen, is there anything you can think of that I maybe have glossed over or missed, or that you might think is important for the group to know?
No, I think you covered it well. I think we should probably just go down to questions and see if we can answer anything that might be out there.
Yeah, I think we can go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, but if there's anything that anybody needs, I'm happy to go over it.
And the Alderwoman should be coming on in just a moment to go ahead and go through those questions.
Danny, no, that's not true. I was having you do it. I was literally just texting you to say, go on and ask the questions since they're right there in front of you.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. Okay, so the first one here, Nicole, is going to be, you state that the assessments are based on the increases in the market. How do you justify price increases on a house that are not market ready?
What do you mean not market ready? I'm not sure I understand the question.
I believe those that are not ready to be put on the market yet. I am just unfortunately reading these questions as they were sent in.
Sorry. So our numbers are based off of actual sales, and so if something's not market ready, that to me says it hasn't been conveyed, unless I'm misunderstanding.
Maybe they're asking about they don't think their house is fixed up enough to sell. That could probably be it. And if that's the case, in this current market, everything seems to be selling. We actually reviewed a sale just a few days ago. It was torn down to the studs and it's still sold. So, and a lot of the listings are stating, you don't have to do anything to your house, we can sell it as is. So if that's what the market ready question is, with this market, just about everything is market ready, no matter what condition or what state of repair.
Perfect. So we'll see if we get any clarification if necessary in the question chat box if that was not answered in the manner that you expected. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next question. That is, what is the radius used to assess values? For example, there are plenty of vacant lots and abandoned homes and crumbling buildings or raised buildings. Explain how each of these factors feed into the entire, the entire assessment value.
So years ago, the city was divided up to about 150, we'll go with residential neighborhoods. And these neighborhood boundaries or radiuses, if you want to call them, are usually set by natural boundaries, such as a river, man-made, such as interstates or main roads. And then we also designed the neighborhoods to contain as similar housing stock as possible. In other words, if there's a new subdivision and they're all 1980 homes, that would be one neighborhood. Whereas if you get closer to the lake, they're much older homes, but they're usually of the same similar style and age. So we create these neighborhoods to keep them as similar or homogeneous as possible. And then the sales that occur in those neighborhoods would be the ones that determine what the market is doing in those areas. So that's kind of the radius and how we set up neighborhoods.
Okay, and then this is kind of a continuation of that. Could you explain a bit about the influence of like the mega purchases that are being seen throughout the city, and also the megaplexes that are being built that are greatly inflating the value of said areas?
We are seeing a lot of investor purchases, and we really scrutinize those because we don't want them to influence the market in the wrong way, either up or down. We tend to look for purchases that include just a single property, one property at a time, whereas investors will buy 5 or 6 at a time. We see that the parties are unrelated. In other words, it's not parent to child. It's not from an owner to their own LLC. We look at the exposure time on the market. Usually right now, this market, that could be as few as a few days. In the past, exposure usually would expect to be 30 to 90 days, but just about every sale now is less than 30 days. So we look for single property sales, unrelated parties, time on the market, normal financing. In other words, the seller didn't finance the purchase or provide money for other things to go towards it. And then willing buyers and sellers. Nicole had touched on it before. A sheriff's auction is not a willing buyer or willing seller, and same with foreclosures. So by going through this pretty much set standard, and this has been codified by court cases, we can eliminate the effect of investor buying or institutional buying on the market so that it doesn't mess up everybody else's assessment.
Okay. Let's see here. And then I believe this was regarding a particular slide that Nicole had up earlier. So it's asking what number is District 15 at if District 5 is number 11? And I believe that might have been answered with that slide. If I recall correctly, this question did come in before that particular slide came up, so I think that might have been answered, but I was wondering if you could just go back and review that if possible, Nicole.
District 15 for residential only is at, give me just a moment, I'm sorry. They're at number 2. They had a pretty large residential increase of 30.93%.
Thank you for that. And then another question is, just a couple more here. If we appeal, can it possibly increase?
Yes, it could. As Nicole said, we don't get into the properties as much as we'd like to. If there's work that's been done to the property that we're not aware of, then the value would increase. Probably the 2 toughest parts of our job is the lack of interior inspections and then the lack of people taking up permits to do work. Many times we'll see a sale, it'll come in and say kitchen remodeled 5 years ago, and they never pull a permit. We never caught that value, and we're only made aware of it due to the sale. So if you have work that's done and it's not reflected in your current property record card or our database, then yes, there's a possibility that it could increase.
Well, and the objection process, just to add on to that, it can go both ways. If a property owner feels that their assessment is too low, they can object and justify why they think it should be higher. So, because like I said, we hear mostly from the people who think the assessment is too high and they want it reduced, but there's a good number of people, less vocal perhaps, that think their assessment is too low and they want it higher. So that process goes both ways.
Okay. And then this one just came in, so I want a quick bounce to this one. It says, so as a follow-up to the investor question, there are areas where corporate investors are receiving multiple buys and building multi-million-dollar houses to the point that taxes double each year. How are those properties assessed and contributing to the pot? For example, there are 3 corporate or investor buys ranging from 11.3 million to 100 million. This has spilled over into areas where assessments and then have greatly increased them. So what is done to help this?
I guess it's hard to answer that question without knowing exactly which properties are involved. $100 million property would have to be large residential or commercial. So without specifics, I can't really answer that other than the fact that we do vet the sales thoroughly before we use them and apply them to the market for everybody else.
Okay. And then again, this one is actually related back to District 15. So since we do have a little bit of time, I will go ahead and entertain this, but why was District 15 so high and there are not as many residential homes in the district compared to other districts?
Give me just a moment. Let me pull my information for that district. So District 15, total parcel count is 7,792. Just to kind of compare it to District 5, which has 11,670. So the median values and the median assessments in District 15 are pretty low. And as we talked about, we do have these corporate buyers. They're not all discounted. I just want to make that clear. And when it does qualify as a valid transaction, it will count for the sales that we would look at for valuing other properties. And our modeler, one of our members of our modeling team, looked at the number of corporate sales within District 15. And while there was an increase citywide, District 15 saw 3 times what the city's average was for corporate sales. And so because the values are so low, that allows buyers to buy more, right? Like you can, if you have $200,000 and you have a median value of $50,000, in Bayview, you might get 1 house, but in District 15, you get almost 4 houses, right? So the dollar goes further, and there's more properties that that can be purchased, and so the values are going slightly higher. I mean, we saw a median assessment in 21 of $43,000, and in 22 it went up to $58,600. And so they saw a pretty severe residential increase, that's for sure.
Okay. So I do have a question about the hotline, and then I will get back to one other question. There are 2 that I will be transparent about skipping because they are not related to our district. Again, this is for District 5, so Deer District, Bader, these are not relevant to our district. But I do, so one about the hotline is going to be, if you call the appraiser hotline, are you able to inquire what is on your property record card?
Yeah, you can request that. Or you can always make a records request as well. We can give you that information.
Annie, let me interject for a second. How many more questions do we have left?
I'm trying to get
They're
some
still
clarification
coming
by review for one in particular, yes.
Okay. Is there one that you have right now that you wanted to read?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's see. Give me 1 second here. I apologize. So essentially, this was asking about like some of the rescue dollars or other funds that would be necessary to help stabilize neighborhoods. The values you consider market values don't reflect the amounts of money, quality of life, memories, neighborhood culture, and build avenues of trust and safety. Driving around is possible, but if they are placed on a rotational basis and there is a system that lists if a house is vacant and abandoned, how does that factor into determining assets? The flip side is that when the eminent domain is used, these same factors are used to inflate property assessments and are not used to compensate individuals who have lived in their home for 25+ years.
Well, there's a lot of topics on that question.
I apologize.
A lot of topics there. I can tell you the Department of City Development is the city department that's dealing with all of the anti-displacement and houses all of the housing programs. And unfortunately, they're not here tonight, but they definitely would be the department to gear those questions towards. As far as valuing sort of the outside factors, we're really valuing the bricks and the mortar. And that's pretty much where our analysis ends, is what is that house going for? What would that house be sold for on the open market? So those other factors don't really factor into what we do as assessors. And I don't know if that answers the question.
And then just one last one here. Given the instance where upon reappraisal, an appraiser states that there are a lot of violations, what time is rendered to individuals to remediate and what funds are available?
Violations, again, are done by a different department. The appraisers in our office aren't trained to recognize or identify violations. There's probably obvious things, mold on the walls, stuff like that. But if there's code violations, and that's done by a different department, and we wouldn't be able to speak to that.
Yeah, all the code violation stuff that goes to the Department of Neighborhood Services, or DNS. They may have like code violation grants available. I'm not entirely sure. I know other municipalities often do. I'm not sure if the City of Milwaukee DNS does, but that would be a question that would be directed towards them for sure. Yeah, I mean, if there are violations, that it really affects just the condition that we are looking at when we are valuing the property. We're not issuing citations. We're not determining if there are code violations in existence. We're just straight looking at it for the valuation of the property. So we're not code enforcement inspectors at all. We're just, like I said, looking at the value overall. That would be DNS that would be looking at any code violations and be able to answer any questions as far as whether there are funds available for abating or remediating those.
And that also could be emailed to our office and we can get you connected with the correct department. And that is everything I have, Nicole.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Danny. I really appreciate you stepping in to get those questions, because although you did email them to me, I was having a hard time accessing my my email at the time, and I'm not sure, so it just threw me off.
They were still rolling in, so they were still rolling in, so it worked out perfectly.
Okay, thank you so much. I do appreciate it. And I also want to thank Commissioner Larson as well as Steve for being here on tonight, because these are very important questions. It's a very important time for our city. And so to be able to get people information about how to appeal or object to their assessment is very helpful for that information to get out to constituents. And just for those who may be wondering, will this information get out to the viewing public? I will tell you, this is a neighborhood meeting, so we don't broadcast this out. There's no intention to broadcast this meeting out to the viewing public other than if it's aired on Channel 25. And so, and I believe there is a schedule that is determined to get information out. But this information is on the city website, isn't that correct, Commissioner Larson, where people can go to the city website and access that information?
Yeah, if you go to the city website, you can go to the department drop-down list and go down to the assessors department, and we have a frequently asked questions page. We have lots of information there. And if it's too burdensome to find it, I know websites can often be confusing. In the right-hand side of the website, you'll see our phone number, and you'll also see a live link called Ask the Assessor. Call us or submit the question through there. We'll get back to you right away. We're here to help.
And I would even suggest too that if people would like access to the PowerPoint, because that has been publicly presented to the Judiciary and Legislation Committee, right? So that information is already public. So if you would like to email my office a copy of that, Commissioner Larson, then that way we can also share that information if folks want to be refreshed about how this process goes. And I would say that at this time, this meeting was to go for an hour. I do not like to prolong something that, as my husband say, don't prolong the inevitable. It seems like all the questions have been answered. The presentation was very informative and gave a lot of information. And again, you can access my office in order to get more information about what's going on, and so that we can meet those deadlines. And so just before we leave and wrap up, because we are pretty much wrapping up, I want to thank everyone for being here, for taking the time out. I do realize that, this is around at dinner time, so families are rushing to get home. And so for those of you who were able to be on the call, we really appreciate you taking the time out, as we wanted you to have this information. And please share it with your neighbors, as well as have them email the office. If they, the 5th District's office, and I will have Danny, can you put that information in the chat, how they can access us? And so we will leave that up for a little while so that people can get that information. And then as we see the numbers go down, we will know that the meeting is over. But at this time, Commissioner Larson and Stephen, please feel free to, end your night with us, but we will certainly just make sure that people get the information that we shared. So thank you.
Alderwoman Dodd. Yeah, thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. Please feel free to call our office anytime with any question. There is no such thing as a dumb question. We're here to answer questions. We're here to serve you.
Appreciate it. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night.
You too. You too.